Welcome back to Tech, Tesla, and Trends. In continuing our conversation on UBI, in this case, I'm looking at the things that I think will cause a UBI structure to fail. There's a lot of people that really believe that taxing the rich is a solution to this particular conundrum. The reality of the rich's life is that it is structured not to pay taxes, and the tax code is built to do so. If you don't believe that, your favorite Orange Man Bad is going to be the boogeyman that you're all screaming about. But the reality is that he has mentioned very clearly that the tax code, written by both the Democrats and the Republicans and whoever else in whatever country you happen to be, whichever side of the aisle they are all about preserving their capital and preserving the money that they have made through whatever means, legal, illegal, ill-gotten, however it might come across. That's oftentimes how these laws are structured. Once the law is structured, is it illegal? No, it's legal per the country's laws. The biggest challenge that we face is not the whole rich versus poor, but rather learning how to structure a system that functions for all at an individual level. And that is very different than what is being pushed about in the pro-communist, pro-leftist, pro-whatever group happens to be out there right now, pushing their narrative, their one true narrative in many cases, about how the poor are being oppressed. The reality that we have to work on is teaching everyone how to become producers within this society. And I know there's a lot of people that are going to be upset about that particular statement, but it's truth. We have to learn to produce, create value, and then we receive for the amount that value is in the marketplace. This isn't new. This isn't different, crazy, or insane. It is basic economics. You are paid based upon the value that you create. Now, in socialist societies, you're paid based on the value that you steal from the producers, from the production. When production is stolen from a corporation, that corporation will in turn charge more for the products that remain under their control. That is the way the market functions. Even in Soviet societies, most of those had black markets. That's where the available resources went, and they charged exorbitant amounts for those available resources and products that were within the control of those states. So the whole theory of tax the rich, or let's become socialists, or whatever the latest political one true narrative out of colleges these days happens to be, the reality is very different from the warm and fuzzy statements being taught by their professors or being bandied about on signs. This is a very important trend in the world today. There are many students who believe that there is injustice, and they are right, there is injustice. But that is not something that building a systemic socialist state will solve. In fact, having lived in a socialist state as it crumbled, I can tell you that that is the path to destruction for the society that adopts it. In fact, it will become more unjust rather than more just. And those who seek justice have to defend liberty, because liberty is the sole source for that justice. Now, how does this impact UBI? That's a really good question. And ultimately, when we have income taxes, we are placing a burden upon those who produce. That tax is regressive in nature and causes some people to seek to produce less so that they can receive more benefit. This is not a solid, sound system. It is, however, what is often done because it's easiest to do. It's very easy to identify income sources and to tax that individual. You can never tax a company because corporations do not pay taxes. They charge more for their product. Period. They do not pay taxes, ever. So if you think you're going to tax your way to prosperity by taxing corporations, all you are doing is raising the price on all products. This is a failed system. There has to be a method by which you are capturing the value that is there. Now, some will say, oh, that's a value-added tax. Potentially that's there. But as you add more and more percentage to a value-added tax, that increases the price on the good. Now, that's part of their particular structure. That's how most of Europe is structured. There's a lot of people moving from Europe to lower tax areas. Why? Too expensive to live. Value-added tax is a great idea, but a failed idea nonetheless. Anything over 10% begins to negatively and regressively impact the economy. That is the very nature of what happens with taxation. It becomes regressive. So looking at the social credit ideas out of China. Now, I don't know where you are on the freedom scale, but that is a system that is broken. When you are individually penalizing folks because of how they think, the words they speak, and the overall agenda that you possess, that is a broken system. From a liberty perspective, people cannot generate value when they fear the very creation that might be necessary. If the words you speak are contrary to the ideals erstwhile leaders or jailers, as often becomes the case when it is based on idea politics, agenda politics. This is a bad deal. And the idea of taxing individuals based upon that particular social credit and charging them more for goods or services or whatever else may be is very destructive and creates a class structure that no one in their right mind would call just, unless, of course, they're out to control people. Give that a thought. Really give it a thought, because that is the sole purpose of a social credit score. Controlling the minds of individuals. And when you are in that game, it's destructive. Now, property tax. That's another area that has been bandied about as an opportunity for UBI. It's immoral in my mind. First of all, if you are taxing property, you are taxing the place where somebody lives. Therefore, a person can never truly own where they live. That is, at a fundamental level, making their life insecure. Thus, property tax, in its own way, shape, and form, is all about minimizing the security of the individual and maximizing the ability of the government to steal from the individual through property taxes. How many of you have ever taken a stroll down to look at the unpaid property tax logs? Can you get a steal of a deal? There's a reason for that, because that's what's happening. Property is being stolen from individuals through this process. It's especially abhorrent in my mind when the structures that are on that, their home, is paid for, yet the very property itself is still being recurrently taxed. This is destructive to the individual. Plain and simple. Old people lose their homes this way. I find that repugnant in the extreme. The final item, the idea that you can either tax the public or find some source of private donation to fund your UBI scheme. No, this doesn't work because it isn't sufficient. It isn't consistent. It is spits and starts. You may have funding secured for 5 years worth of a program. That's not universal in its nature. That cannot be sustained. So if you're not going to be able to sustain a UBI structure, it is at a fundamental level broken. So this is what we have to work with. I'm sure there is a boatload of additional items where UBI fails and that are systemically causing that the goal of creating a universal basic income that is recurring income on a month-by-month basis for those individuals across the board. Again, this is the key. It has to be across the board for all individuals. A basic income, universal basic income. There are no exceptions. The rich will get it. The poor will get it. All are in the same boat, because this takes care of that basic need, that basic fundamental reality of maintaining life. That's what UBI actually is. And is created for. Now, there are going to be some discussions, I'm sure. Much of what I've said is going to cause some of you to be angry, and some of you to be cheering and saying, "Yeah, that's right." Well, either way, I'd love to hear your comments. We'll talk about this in the comments below. Have a good night.